Hello, America. This is Ray Gilbride with WeSpeak.com. Today we're going to be talking more about America is Under Siege. Today we have a very special guest, America Sheriff David Clarke, on with us. Sheriff Clarke is a patriot. He's the author of Cop Under Fire. He's gone around the world talking about constitutional rights and the law. So we're really happy to have him with us today, so we're going to get right into this. So, hello, Sheriff. Welcome to the show. We got some things to ask you today, and we're just going to get right underway. So, Sheriff, America right now, would you say it's fair to say that America is under siege by a far left ideology?
I'd say it's accurate. Right out of the socialist handbook. It's a pamphlet I read recently called "And Not a Shot is Fired." It's how a socialist system can destroy capitalism and then replace it with a socialist form of government. And when you read that pamphlet, and that thing goes back to the 1950s, I believe, it was how socialism took over in Czechoslovakia. And what they describe in terms of how to do it is exactly what's being employed here in the United States of America.
Sheriff, you've been on the record many times on many different occasions and shows talking about and warning people in history about the dangers of Black Lives Matter and what this could be. Now, people did not listen to you then, but what you said has now come true. What do you think about that, and where do we go from here?
Well, like I said back in 2015, when I first identified this group the way I did, I said, you may not think I'm right today, but I will be right on this. So here we are 5 years later, and a lot of people are surprised, but I'm not. Look, Black Lives Matter is a hate group. It is a Marxist, Leninist hate group. They spread fear and hate in the name of virtue. They are not, it's not a good movement. These are not good people. This is a facade. It's a mask, if you will, that, this is about Black lives and it's about police violence, as they like to term it. I call it police use of force. They think it's about white supremacy and white superiority, white privilege and racism. It's not. Look, that's just the mask that they wear. If this movement really believed that Black Lives Matter, they would be in the city of Chicago right now, where in the last 5 weekends, not 5 weeks, 5 weekends, 311 people have been shot, 67 dead, mostly Black victims, mostly Black perpetrators. And you don't hear a peep, by the way, this past weekend in that total, a 3-year-old boy, Makai James, killed as he sat in his father's car in a drive-by shooting, little Black kid. So when I see all this going on, this real violence, street violence, and you don't hear a peep from these goons, lets me know that they are full of crap.
Sheriff, that young child that was shot in his father's arms in Chicago, we don't hear about that on the press. And the thing that's very disturbing is we have things so turned around that the mainstream has turned what is good into bad and what is bad into good. They're actually heroizing these people who are villains. What do you think about that?
I think it's really sick. I think you have to be sick-minded to try to deify these individuals that they hold up as symbols of what they call oppression. Most of these individuals are nothing more than common criminals. Some of them violent, common career criminals. They're not good people. Look, this all sparked this last round anyway. If you remember the first time in 2015, it was over in Ferguson, Missouri, where they tried to deify Mike Brown as having his hands up, walking away when he was shot. Turned out to be a lie. And they used Mike Brown, excuse me, as the symbol of what they called, a misuse of police use of force. Turns out that Mike Brown at that time had just committed a strong-arm robbery of a convenience store clerk before he met up with Darren Wilson, tried to disarm the police officer before Darren Wilson had to use deadly force to save his own life. So then you go down the line, others that they've tried to do this with. So now they think they really have one in George Floyd. George Floyd didn't deserve to die in the fashion that he did. I want to make that clear. But at the same time, this guy was no saint. This guy, George Floyd, in a forced burglary, broke into a home and held a loaded gun to the stomach of a pregnant woman, threatening to shoot her in the stomach. All right, that's just one of the crimes George Floyd committed. So I'm not here to say that because he died the way he did, he deserved it. I'm saying these are not good people that they're holding up. You notice, Ray, that you never see some black honor student, guy who regularly goes to school, pulls down great grades. You never hear like a black serviceman who's home on leave being involved in this crap. Why? They don't lead lives of crime. So that to me is the defining thing. The defining issue here is that these guys are always involved in some sort of skullduggery that requires a police response.
Sheriff, in Seattle, there's 6 city blocks, Capitol Hill, that the mayor of Seattle actually handed over. She pulled the police department out and gave that to the Black Lives Matter demonstrators. She demonized the law enforcement and made fun of it, calling it the Summer of Love. And now, after multiple shootings and people have died there, she's asking the same police department she demonized and took the power from to go back in and fix her mistakes. But she's also made it public known that the police may not use force to remove the people. Is that putting law enforcement people in harm's way? Is that undermining them before they even go in?
First of all, I call her Mayor Mary Poppins. This woman is dangerously naive, okay? She let this go on for too long. She called this, when they took over that 6-block area, and I call it CHIP, Capitol Hill Insurrection Plot, because that's what it was. It's an insurrection. And she said that it was like a street festival, nothing to worry about. She says this could be the impetus for the Summer of Love. Look, this is a summer of rage going across the United States right now, especially in these major urban areas. Seattle has poor leadership. They have poor police leadership. This Carmen Best, the chief, has been an ultimate failure. She sets her officers up to fail. You have to put officers in a position to successfully complete a mission. How do you do that? You give them the resources, you make sure that they're fully staffed, and you give them all of the available things to them reasonably under the circumstances and under the law to complete the mission. When you tell them to stand down, when you evacuate a police precinct, which is a command post for heaven's sakes, and then the chief there turned around later and said, well, I didn't order it. Well, who did? Somebody did. So yes, between her and between this Mary Poppins mayor, they're putting these officers in a very precarious position. They're putting them in harm's way on the front lines, allowing these rioters to do anything that they want, including throw projectiles, shoot at the police, throw rocks and bottles at the police, and all they can do is fend them off. Look, the Seattle Police Department there is going to have to make a decision. This is a tipping point here. You're seeing this across the nation with other law enforcement agencies. Here's the choices that a police officer has going to report to duty today or any day. They say to themselves, I have 2 choices. I can either go and be killed in the line of duty, or if I defend myself, I'll be charged with murder. Those are the 2 options that a cop has reporting to duty. And some of them now are starting to take some sort of job action. I'm encouraged by that because it's time, because they have no political support. These 2-bit politicians don't have the courage to stand on the side of the police. Instead, they're crafting public policy off of protest signs, for heaven's sakes. Defund the police, abolish the police. This stuff is nonsense, but this is the kind of political leadership you have in Seattle, Washington.
In Whatcom County, there was a Black Lives Matter movement recently, and we had 2 very different responses. We had the Bellingham Police Department, who chose to negotiate with them and actually gave up some streets in town, and we had the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department. Now, the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department was more than happy to go in and take care of the situation, and they told the Bellingham Police Department, if you need us, we're here. But we are not going to go in and talk to them, and we're not going to go in and hold hands. If people are breaking the law, we're hauling them away right now. We're going to stop this. Well, upon that, the Bellingham Police Department chose to do it a different way, which then gave the occupiers some streets and time, and they ended up, going away after some concessions by some of the people saying they might even talk about defunding the police department. But there we have two very different strategies from law enforcement in the same area. This is confusing for people. What do you think about that?
Well, let's kind of sort that out here. First of all, as it relates to the sheriff, I don't know why the sheriff feels in Washington State anyway that they'll wait for the police to call him in. I know when I was the sheriff here in Milwaukee County, by the state constitution, the sheriff is the top law enforcement officer in any county. So I don't need their permission. I don't need to stand by. But at the same time, when the police are not going to do their uphold their end of the obligation to protect life and property, somebody's got to step in. But there just seems to me, Ray, to be a lot of confusion there. A lot of people talking, a lot of people pointing fingers in different directions, but you don't see any action. You don't see any leadership. Somebody has to say to themselves, look, I'm in charge. I'll be responsible. Here's what we're going to do, and communicate that to the citizens, because the citizens who are counting on this protection, they're looking around right now. They're not feeling real safe right now. One of the reasons is nobody appears to be in charge. So that's what's important. That's why I talk about leadership. That's what it is. Somebody's got to announce, hey, look, I'm in charge. I'm taking over. Here's what we're going to do. Communicate with the law-abiding people. Communicate with the kooks and tell them, look, you got 24 hours to get out of Dodge. Otherwise, we're coming in maximum force, and we're going to root you out like vermin.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. Is there any other last comments you want to say to the American people before we go?
Hang in there. Hang in there. As long as we got Donald Trump in the White House and certain governors across the United States, there's always hope.
We appreciate Sheriff David Clarke taking his time to come on the show today, and we will be asking him on in the future as we follow this. His information and wisdom in these areas are second to none. He is a true American patriot, and he has done so much to help educate people on the concerns and the things that are important to our Constitution. So as we move forward and see what happens as it unravels in Seattle and across the country, we ask you to remember a couple things. First of all, it's very important for people to have the right to protest peacefully and to get a message out. However, it's wrong for that protest to be hijacked by thugs, for people to be killed, for damage to be done to property, for lawlessness in the name of the message. Then that's the difference. When we're looking at these protesters, we have to decide, are they legitimately trying to say something, or have they been taken over? And when that line is crossed, we need to back our law enforcement and allow them to go in and take care of the situation. When someone gets involved in breaking the law, they no longer are peaceful protests, and they need to be put down. We need to protect our country, need to protect our people and our Constitution. So from Ray Gilbride at WeSpeak.com, I hope you have an awesome day, and be kind to the ones around you.